Hello and welcome to a short video on the EMS settings page and what to look for when things don't seem to be working the way they should be. So we'll start off by looking at the EMS as it would be presented to the users if they were looking at it themselves. And the areas we're going to be interested in are the status page and the settings tab. And we'll also be looking at remote control on the EMS and also remote control on the inverter and what you should be seeing in these pages. Let's look at the status tab to start with. On the status tab, you will see when it was last updated, what its status is, any warning codes or error codes, and what inverters you've got connected. In this instance, we have 2 inverters connected. And if we look at each individual inverter, we can see the serial number if it's online, what the status of the charge is for each of the batteries, its temperature, and what is it actually doing at this moment in time. Error codes. If your status is warning, you'll normally have an error code in here. There'll be something like 8002. If it is, it's just a warning to tell you that one of your inverters is having problems. Could be an overvoltage problem, anything else out in that era. And really, you just need to go and look at the inverter to see what the error is. You know how to work with inverters, so you would know how to rectify them. A word of caution is if you need to do a calibration or charge or discharge the battery, you have to put the EMS into a waiting stage. Let's look at settings. Settings is where you will enable and disable the EMS, as shown on here. We are enabled at the moment. Set a time charge. If a user tells you his EMS is not charging, just make sure that there is a time charge period in here. You can set 3 time charges up, and on the new version of the portal, you have to click for the other 2 charge slots, slot 2 and slot 3. They will start at 0000 and end at 0000. You cannot do multi-day spanning on a single charge slot. Now, if it was something like Intelligent Octopus, you would have from 0000 to 0530, and then you would have the evening slot of 2330, 2359 as slot 2. And you would put in there what you would want it to charge up to. If you look at time discharge is the eco mode for the EMS. If time discharge is set, it will try and support the house load using PV first, battery second to supplement PV, and if that's not enough energy, then allow grid as well. And you notice here that we have a start time of 0000 to 2359, so we have eco set for all day long. Time charge will take priority over that, and will charge in the time slots presented. And we have an export slot. And in export here you can see we have 1540 to 1640. And that will export from all batteries connected at full rate between those times, even though you have a timed discharge or eco slot set. So it will override that. What does that look like on the graph? If we go back a day. Here we can see is our battery import, and that's our battery export. So that's what it looks like. Well, that was settings. Settings are relatively simple to do. What to look for EMS wise, if it's not exporting, it's probably because an export slot has not been. If we look at the remote control for the EMS and we scroll down, and in between two of the slots is the export limit. And that's how much it will allow to export. If that is set to 0, it won't export. I get a copy of the customer's DNO agreement for how much they're allowed to export and then set it in there in watts. Not kilowatts, but watts. One of the other issues you may find is if your inverter is showing error and the customer says it is flashing red then green, it's because the time has not been set or there has been a substantial power cut and they have lost the time settings. So just check here. And if you press the refresh button, it should come back with the same date. If it does not, if it comes back with 2017 or 2020, just repress the send button to reset the time, and then the EMS will start to run again. You will have to do a restart of the EMS. If you go to here and then just restart the inverter, and that will solve that problem. Another thing to check if it's not charging or discharging is do the times in here match those shown on the settings screen. There has been a little bit of disconnect between those occasionally. So just check by refreshing them to make sure that they are still set correctly. Inverters and inverter settings. I've seen on many occasions that the inverter settings have been changed. That's sort of a slight misunderstanding of how the inverters work with an EMS. The important part here is that meters are set to no meters. The inverter does not have any meters. It has an internal CT that will use to read the grid. Generally, we have eco mode turned off, discharge mode turned off, and AC charge turned off. The EMS will take control of those when it needs to and will turn them on and off. And the most other important part to think about here are on the charge slots. So they will always be set to 00002359 for both AC charge start time and DC charge start time. So if they tell you that one of their inverters is not managing the load or it is using grid when it's getting up to 3 kilowatts, and you can see that one inverter is not taking charge of that load and supporting it, it is because someone has changed those times. It's very easy to do if on the old app you go and change the times. On the new one you cannot because it's set for EMS only. And that's all there really is to the settings. So you can see that in inverter wise the settings are quite simple. EMS are in there. The one to remember about is that export power if it's not exported, and just checking the times if they don't seem to match. And the EMS itself page details what it's doing. Well, that was a short video on how to use and set up EMS.